Okay, welcome to another case study. This case study looks pretty simple, but there's quite a bit of information here to gather from this one. This is a single tooth case right now, but it's interesting to actually look at this case and how somebody actually evolved. So this is a young person, has, a number of fillings, maybe 6 or 7 fillings up above, and a couple of root canals on the bottom, root canal up here with a crown. And this is how it begins, is what I would like to call this video. So this patient didn't have orthodontics. The bite, how her teeth are together, kind of go in this slope. So one thing that orthodontics can do is create a situation where the bite becomes more even, because as this is collapsed in, these teeth then form to it. So you get this kind of S-shaped curve too. Now, it doesn't seem to really matter that much at this point, but what I see later on, when people start really losing teeth down here, it starts collapsing the bite here, and that becomes very, very difficult. We're talking, let's say if this person is 30 years old, we're talking at 60. So let's say 30 years later, that if they lose their teeth could be a potential issue. Here's what we're going to be looking at here. This particular tooth had a root canal and a crown, and what I tell people about root canals and crowns, that's the last thing the tooth is pretty much going to see. There really isn't really much dentistry you should be spending money on a tooth that's already had a root canal and a crown, unless it's just a simple filling or something like that. But I don't do retreatments. I don't recommend retreatments. I don't recommend, especially don't recommend what we call an apicoectomy, or anywhere where they do a surgical root canal, or what they also call a reverse root canal. I never recommend that one. That's the apicoectomy. Here she's got a baby tooth here, possibly here too, and maybe that would be, I'm not sure, that looks normal here. No wisdom teeth. Here's a problem. She had the root canal here on this tooth here, and she didn't do the crown. And that's a problem, because she now spent money doing a root canal, time and effort-wise, and then has decided to not finish the job. I say it's like in mountaineering, it's like going to climb the mountain and dying at the top. That's not the point of mountaineering. The point of mountaineering is to climb the mountain and come back down. So she only got 50% achieved, but then it's a kiss of death for that tooth. So this tooth is brittle, and as she bites and chews, this tooth will crack and possibly fracture in a way that makes this tooth hopeless. So that is a big problem, because you just spent money on a root canal and the filling and whatever you did. And I tell people, then you did the root canal for fun, because you didn't do it to finally save the tooth, because you didn't finish the job. So you've got to do a crown on molar teeth if you don't want them to be lost. Here's her scenario. Is now she has recurrent decay, excessive decay on the tooth that had the root canal and the crown. And her problem now is that when she loses this, which is we're going to extract this, now she is going to be missing something for a while, which means this is part of the primary chewing area. This area here is the primary chewing area, these teeth here. And now that she's missing this, she's going to be chewing 100% over here pretty much. And that's going to put undue stress on this one that she didn't protect with a crown. So in the 4 or 8 months it takes to put the implant in here and get this restored, she's going to be chewing over here, which could be the time period where she chews if she's a nut chewer or eats something really hard on here. she can pretty much crack or break that. And now she's got a secondary problem by not fixing this correctly in the first place. So that's a problem. So let's look at this tooth here, and we'll talk about the implant placement and what we would want to do there. So let's look at that a little more closely. And if we go right down the middle here, okay. So overall, the bone quality looks pretty good. I wouldn't complain too much about that. I'm right between the roots now. That's where I want the implant. So the bone looks pretty good. That looks really nice. But look at this shelf. This is a constriction in the posterior area or the back tooth area. And that's a really tight constriction. That really has this real sharp shelf. And for the dentists out there that do not have a CT, this is a huge, huge problem for you. If you're doing implants from just a Panorex x-ray like this one, you can't really divulge or tell me that that shelf looks the way it is and that it's going to possibly be a direct assault for the drill when you come in contact with it, and the drill will win. And you don't want the drill to win. You want the bone to win. And what's going to happen if you drill here and go right through, there's a lot of arterial flow here, right in this area. That's typically where it is. You can't really see too much, but if you really look at that, you could possibly see it right there. And I know it's really difficult to see on this video, but trust me, you can see it here. And you do not want to drill into that. I can tell you that. That's going to be a gusher for sure. And it's a very difficult thing to actually control. And this is the floor of the mouth. The floor of the mouth, if you have blood flowing under the floor of the mouth at that rate and you can't control it, that can possibly cut off the airway. And you got a real problem. You're going to have some sort of drainage or, do something serious. You're going to have to hold that tight and make sure that doesn't bleed out. So you're going to have, unless you're an oral surgeon, you're going to know how to deal with this. But if you're a general dentist, you're probably not going to be very aware, if you don't even know to use a CT in the first place, how to deal with this arterial blood flow when you perf through into that arterial artery and vein area here underneath this shelf. So this is a real, real problem. So can we do an implant here is the case. So let's look at that. Yes, you can. The bone quality looks good. And I'm just going to grab a size here. I like something a little bit wider, but let's just do a 4.5 by 10 and throw that in. And that's assuming that this height of the bone is maintained. Now, that maintaining, let's say if it's perfect, you're about ideal with a 10 millimeter implant here. That's a little too close because your drill is going to want to go through further. So here's where you might want to use sinus drills so you don't perf through that wall, but you want to be sure that you have a large enough implant. Well, in this case, she's got width. My guess is that the actual implant needs a little more room here, but you've got a little bit more width. So I'm going to actually bring this down because I don't believe that it's going to be ideal. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And the good thing here about this patient is she's got a lot of bony wall right where we need it. Oh, why is that not grabbing? There we go. So I would say it's probably going to at least be like this, even without a graft, because there's such a strong facial wall here. I wouldn't recommend a graft on this case because it's not going to change much. When you have a very strong and thick facial wall like this, you're not going to see a big effect of the graft because it's holding the site for the bone to grow in. You know, if you have enough cortical bone out there, all the graft is doing is holding it from the tissue invagination, but if the tissue even goes in, it doesn't really matter because the bone is telling it to grow across in all ways a lot faster. It'll grow up to that area pretty high. You'll lose a little bit, but I don't necessarily see that the graft is going to change or make a miracle here that's going to be worth the effort or the cost. If you're a grafting doctor out there, then yeah, graft it, costs the patient, does no real harm unless they get an infection, which is always a possibility with grafts. But at least you kind of always pad in the conservative nature of what type of doctor you actually are, or what type of practice you kind of have. So here's where those cases come up, like, is a graft actually necessary? I would say not in this case. So I would say you want to, if it's healed at this line, you're going to want to put an implant in that might be a little wider. So let's look at a 6x8. See what that looks like. So this looks a little bit better. This is a beefier implant into the site, and you can bury it down there. And that's what it would look like here. It would look like a stubby implant in this molar. So if you ever want to look up the short fat implant world, you want to look at Bicon. This particular implant is a Hyosin ultra wide, so that would work too. This is a 6x8. I would hope that the bone doesn't go that low, and I'm going to let this patient wait and heal before putting an implant in, so that maybe we can get it a little bit higher up to the top of the bone. Typically, I find the wider the implant, a little deeper below the crest part of the bone helps, because you do get a lot of, you want as much bone growth over the implant if you can, or you don't want too much pulling down because you got a lot of surface area around that implant. So you don't want it too deep because then the bone's going to really ditch around it. But generally, when I do a wider implant, I automatically see the bone settle more after placement than a more narrow one where it has more ability to stay up higher around during the healing period. But this is an interesting case. And I did offer that she could do a 3-unit bridge here. That's always possible. But in her case, I wouldn't recommend it only because she's got 2 teeth that don't even have fillings on it. And so that's the beauty of putting in an implant, because you're really only focusing on 1 tooth at a time. It's just this is going to be a 2-bone healing event case. And it's going to take about 8 months before she sees a tooth here. And meanwhile, over here, I'm telling her that she really needs to get it together and get a crown here before she breaks that, because this is missing for 8 months. So anyway, good simple case. It's a single unit case and a little bit of general dentistry there. So tune in to another case study and look for our live programs as well. And we'll catch you later. Thanks.